So, thank you so much. I just like to start off with just a basic introduction of just who you are and what do you do at the present moment.
So I used to be a competitive Dota player. I think back in like 2014. It's been a while. And then after I retired, I've basically just been working like different events here and there. Because I live pretty close to Beyond the Summit, so they would basically, ask me to help them out with certain things every now and then on production side of things. I've done some casting for various events, and I've basically been around the whole block. And nowadays, I'm just kind of still doing things behind the scenes, pretty much everywhere. Honestly, just like if I get hired for events, I'll do that, and I'm working with Beast Coast on certain things, and that's pretty much it right now.
Taking the focus into Dota 2, you've become pretty entrenched within the game and its community since nearly the beginning of the game's existence. So what was your first encounter like with the game? Like, what was that experience like?
My first encounter with the game, that's
Yes.
a long time ago. I mean, I, uh, I started playing Dota 1 when I was still in high school. Um, this was when I was in Hong Kong, so I was like pretty much playing Dota since I want to say 14. So it's almost like 20 years. It's kind of crazy to think about like how long it's been around, but yeah, I've been playing for almost like 20 years now, and think about like where it's at now. It's like I don't know. I feel like I'm super lucky that I was able to kind of like turn that hobby into something. You know.
Were you surprised to still become such a key member of the community? Are you still surprised that you're still within this community even after so many years?
Uh, I'm not like I'm not surprised. I definitely feel very lucky that I'm still like you know asked to take part in events and that kind of thing. I'm like super lucky in that regard, but uh, to be around the scene, it's not really surprising in that regard because um, Dota's community is still pretty small. Um, so like if you go to a handful of events, you more or less like know everyone in the scene. Like even people that are just kind of like acquaintances, like you still know each other because there's only so many people in Dota, and you see the same faces every single week. So
When did you then you mentioned you've basically started playing this game since the initial edition. And so going a few years down the line, when did you then decide that you were going to pursue a professional career as a player within the game?
uh, this was like probably after TI2, I think. There were a lot more like open tournaments for you to join, and um, I was already like playing with friends who were pretty high level at the time, like uh, and like we were just like, wait, when we might as well enter, right? We're playing all the time anyways, and we weren't doing very poorly. I think we were making like top eight in a lot of these open tournaments in NA, and sometimes even like top three. So we were just like, we might as well try, and we started entering more and more tournaments, and we would put up like decent results, and that kind of like got us on the board, I guess. And after that, peak of that experience, we got like the opportunity, or I say we, but it was mostly me, I got the opportunity to, meet a lot of the big and more popular members of the Dota community. Like at the time, it was Lumi, um, Blitz, and Purge, and Fluff and stuff. And from there, it was basically it was basically them who was just kind of like introducing me to everyone else in the Dota scene. So
Mhm.
that was basically where I got my start.
S Since you started your career basically within the grassroots scene, how do you think that grassroots scene has progressed from when you started until now? Have you seen a massive change, a massive difference, or is it fair to say, have you seen like a sort of diminishment within the grassroots scene and the present day within the Dota scene?
Mm, I think it's I think it's kind of like stagnated. Um, I think Dota hasn't seen like I don't even know if it's seen growth, but it hasn't really seen much of a decline either. Uh, I think as someone who plays in NA, you definitely notice the NA decline, but I feel like everywhere else is like okay. Um, I don't know. I feel like this is like pretty hard to answer because I think like you just have to like take a moment to look at metrics and that kind of thing. I think despite Dota's decline and or growth, like the core community is like still like it still feels like nothing's really changed. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's
It's like even
how it is.
it's like as if even as so much work has been done to improve the scene, do you feel like nothing has really changed in the end in in the basic level, in like in the fundamental level?
Well, that's kind of the thing. I don't think like much has been put into growing the scene over the years. Um, like I think like the only thing that counts as uh you know growing the scene is this is running TI every year. Like outside of TI, I feel like there isn't really anything that grows the scene. It's like it's TI and it's True Sight. These are the only things that Valve puts out in opinion that like actively grows the scene. So because of that, I don't really think like much changes yearly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I kind of like have that sentiment after talking to various peoples, and they kind of sort of say the same thing, in which the scene has sort of stagnated, just because of like the lack of work done to promote the game. And yeah, and I do feel that sentiment throughout all the times in which I spoke to many people. And yeah, it's a shame, honestly, because like there could be more work done. But what do you got to do? I'm just an interview who's just likes talking to people just for just to for the sake of the scene. But yeah, what do you do?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I think like a good example is like having Grubby enter this. Um, Grubby is has been playing a lot of Dota, has been streaming a lot of Dota, and he genuinely likes the game, and he just looks at everything in a much more positive way. Um, and that I don't know how like big of an impact it has, but it's like a really good start for introducing the game of Dota to people. And other than like having big streamers come in and learn the game, like I don't really know how to best grow the scene. it's, it's I don't think it's easy, but it would be nice to see something. That's kind of like, I feel like that's what a lot of Dota players just wish for. It's just like to see something, like anything.
Yeah, it sort of then comes down to the responsibility of, content creators and players themselves to sort of generate any sort of attention towards the game. I mean, even some people even have to do like other um unorthodox or unorthodox way, which might be strange to the familiar sort of fan, but can be interesting to like the casuals, just as a way to have them to be an into the game, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean that part is really difficult because like content creators who are already in the scene, um it's really hard for them to target a demographic outside of people who already watch Dota. So it's like not gonna reach new people anyways. Um so like I feel like if you want to make content to get people into Dota, you basically have to go outside of Dota and bring them in. Um so like for example, you would basically find if you were like a sizable content creator of Dota, you would probably have to go outside of Dota, you know, collaborate with I don't know, an example would be like, someone who's big in League of Legends,
Mhm.
and you would play a game with them, talk about the game, talk about the differences and all that kind of stuff, and then, once you guys finish playing Dota, you can go and play a game of League with them and, talk about it, discuss things, and, kind of like introduce people from that audience to this one, or, whatever else video game. There's like a lot of crossover for Dota. I know um there's a lot of people who play like Path of Exile, for example, also
Mhm.
play Dota. You could always go there or that kind of thing. But that's like one of the only ideas I have in terms of content creation and getting newer players to join.
I mean, within that regard, I kind of want to bring up this video that you've made like a month ago, earlier this month, with VTubers. I saw that video with you and Fumiko and Sheepstick. Like, how did that come about?
Oh, funny enough, they're actually playing right now together in a collaboration again. But that basically came about just because I was getting interested in VTubers, and I started basically following VTubers that I thought were interesting, and Fumiko was one of them. And it turns out that she used to play a lot of Dota, and she messaged me and she was like, "Oh, I used to watch Dota, and I used to watch you play on Team Zephyr, and all that kind of stuff." So we just talked for a bit, and then we were just, "Hey, we should stream Dota together sometimes." Like that's basically it.
Taking the focus back towards yourself, you mentioned before about how you played with Zephyr and numerous other amateur teams for your short player career. And so, how do you look back at your time as a pro player? Do you feel like you could have done more as a player to achieve bigger success, or are you like looking at it in a in a content type of way?
uh, I would say it's definitely both. Um, like when I played, I was still super young. I didn't really know better. I think like there were so many mistakes we made just because we were like immature. And like if I was able to go back and I have like all this knowledge now, it would be so much easier and better to as an experience to play on a team. But unless you go through that experience, like you won't be able to learn this to begin with. So I have no regrets. Could we have done better? Absolutely, but it is what it is, and because of my experience, playing on a team and meeting all these people, like it's made me who I am, and it's introduced me to basically all of my best friends like today. Um, it's because of Dota and the people I met in Dota. So
What would you say is your favorite moment or slash favorite memory as a pro player?
ooh, that's a tough one. I I genuinely believe that winning actually doesn't mean that much to me. It's like I still remember like I think some of my most memorable moments are just like stupid interactions that I have with my teammates, just like having a good time. Like I still remember like moments where for example, when we first went to Korea, one of my teammates, Corey, he's like super American in the sense that he just like eats American food. It's like
Mhm.
the very stereotypical like pizza, burgers, chicken wings, that kind of stuff. And that's like all they know. And then we go to Korea, and surprisingly, he was like super willing to try all sorts of new things with me, and like that was super memorable to me. Because I like trying new stuff, and like no one else was willing to. Uh, I think another very memorable moment was we were just like practicing, and one of my teammates, Blitz, just decides, I think I was gonna go out and buy some food, and he decides to just get up and like he starts wrestling me, and then he takes me to the ground. He's like, "I'm not letting you go until you." I forgot what the context is, but he's like, "I'm not letting you go until you do something." And obviously, as I'm like super stubborn. I just say no, and he's like, "I'm not letting you go then." And we literally laid on the floor for 25 minutes because neither side was willing to budge.
Like,
So
God.
these are the kind of things that I think like fondly of. It's just like time being young and stupid.
Oh, well, in competitively speaking, which, if you can remember, is your favorite match? Like, what sort of match would you look back and say, man, this is peak Eosin. This is who I am, who I should be
Oh,
to.
this one's easy for me actually. Okay, so it was a before I became a quote unquote like true professional. I when I was on an amateur team, we were playing in a tournament called Alienware Cup, and one of the teams that we played against in that tournament was Team Dignitas. And Team Dignitas at the time was one of the best NA teams next to EG. Dignitas was Sting, AUI, Fogged, Tides of Time, and 1437 at
Mhm.
the time. And we met them in the upper bracket, which was and it was a BO1 for whatever reason. But we met them in the upper bracket, and we managed to beat them in a BO1. And we were so bad. We were like so heavily like the underdog. It was just such a unbelievable moment for us. So we like none of us believed we were gonna win, but then the moment we won, we were just like, "What the hell happened?" You know. So
Ye-
yeah, the old Dota players kind of like that are like mutual friends with us to kind of like make that joke even till this day. Like whenever they see me, they'll say like, "Oh, it's Eosin Dignitas Slayer," even till this day.
uh, could you pinpoint what year that Alienware tournament transpired?
It was before TI3, so I think it was 2012 or 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Let me see.
Yeah, because
Maybe it's still on Liquipedia.
yeah, on your Wikipedia, I see that there's the 2013 Alienware tournament, and it doesn't
Oh,
say.
that's probably it then.
Oh,
Yeah, that's probably it.
yeah, because
Oh no
it
no no
just
no! It doesn't say. No no, it
yeah
doesn't say. This one. This is a different Alienware one.
yeah then it's probably like before 2012, like as you
Yeah,
say.
it's probably 2012. Yeah.
And we're gonna have to dig deep and look for that just to make sure that. is present.
I think it was. I know Mott Dota is the one who casted it,
Hmm.
and I think it might be on NA Dota. I don't know if that channel still exists.
Might be.
Just oh, I see. I got it wrong. It was not Alien. It was MLG Game Battles.
Ah,
I found it.
okay, there it is.
It
There it is. Okay,
this
okay,
is
I
it.
got it.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Yeah, thank you so much. Because I was kind of like, I was wondering if it is it actually the Alien World Tournament that's in your Wikipedia, but it doesn't seem that way. So I just kind of had to double check and make sure and ask you.
Yeah. This one is also not in there.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Wikipedia has to figure this stuff out, man. They got to be more accurate, more accurate.
They have most of it down. It's fine.
I guess. I guess. But anyway, um, from that point on, after you finished your career, you then started working as a commentator caster, as you mentioned in the beginning,
Yeah.
sporadically from 2016 to 2019, according to your Wikipedia, before eventually becoming an observer. And so, what prompted you to make that jump towards um, being like a commentator, caster, analyst before becoming an observer?
Um. So there was actually no like I never planned on being an observer. I did want to do commentary though. So when I did commentary, I basically went through the same experience I did in commentating as I did as a competitive player. Like it was I was like super naive and there was like a lot to learn. And I basically fell into this trap where I thought to myself, like, I'm a former pro player. I should be able to just do this without really like practicing or putting in like a lot of time.
Hmm.
Um, and it didn't work out very well for me because I just like I would show up, I would cast, and then that was it. I wouldn't like look at, oh, I could have worked on this, or this sounded good, this didn't sound very good, that kind of thing. I just like did it. And I think like I just like did not improve at all. And like looking back, it's like if I was someone who was hiring for commentary, like I wouldn't be able to justify hiring myself, And um, understanding this, I was just like, you know, now that I've kind of like fallen out of the tournament organizers' favor, I'm just like it's really hard to get back in now.
Hmm.
I don't want to commentate for free either. So I was just kind of like looking around for things to do, and that's basically how I got into observing. Just looking for things to do, and BTS is like, "Hey, we need an observer. Like, would you be willing to help us?" So I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'll go do another. Like, I'll go observe." And as I continue observing, the other observers, move into other things, and I became like the remaining observer that BTS could use here. So I'm just I just got roped into it because I was there, I suppose.
Given how your casting, commentating career panned out, have you thought about possibly returning back to working that to becoming a caster?
Um, I never planned on it, but the thing I always say is I never planned on it, but knowing what I know now, if like someone just asked me like, "Hey, do you want to go commentate?" I'd say yes. Like I would have no issues doing it. And I think I'd be a lot better at doing it to nowadays. But I haven't done any commentating in so long,
Mhm.
So if I was to do it again, it would be like it would basically be like I would have to start from scratch, or I would have to do it for basically nothing. Um, and I don't know if I want to deal with that.
Yeah, and not to mention that there's like a plethora of new faces getting into the scene so far as casting and commentating is like that might also make it harder for other people to jump into that scene and supersede their peers to get more gigs themselves. So it's kind of like a very competitive scene, just as it is in the player department.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's I would say it's actually oversaturated at this point, which is like super super unfortunate for a lot of people who are trying to break through and make it to TI kind of thing. Um, I
Mhm.
basically don't really see at this point any new faces bring into Dota. Like you'll see them in super small tournaments maybe at best, but in terms of majors, international, I'm pretty sure we're just going to be locked into the give or take like 30 talents that we currently have. So
Mhm.
I don't really see that change.
How does the competition aspect in getting jobs compare with being an observer? How does that compare with that, with casting to observing?
Casting versus observing. Observing is I would say observing is like I don't know if you can title it as like competition. It's just like a thing that's there, and tournament organizers have worked with the same people for so long, and quality is like high enough that there's not much reason to change. Like observing is something that the community, like, unless it's insanely bad and there's like just too many problems involving it, um like it's not something that the community can like uh complain about and people are forced to make a change. It's as long as like the TOs trust the observers, um it's more or less just to be the same people all the time. I think I just got super lucky to be invited, uh because they weren't able to get enough people, and that's about it.
Mm. From then on, you would then become one of the leading figures in observing, alongside the most recognizable names, you know, um, such as such as Webpa's Pop Tart, PTP. And so in addition to that, you're gonna kind of have to like adapt yourself and improve in order to stay on the top of your game within your field. And so taking that into consideration, how have you adapted yourself as an observer from when you started until now?
uh that one's actually pretty interesting because unlike commentating, there's really nothing you can do to become a better observer other than like look at how everything looks after broadcasts, right? Like, so after the broadcast, you go and look at it, and you just kind of like think about like how like certain things were framed, and all that kind of stuff. Just like nothing too crazy. um so like, realistically, in order to just keep up to date, you just want to keep watching tournaments. That's basically it. And see what looks good, see what works, and keep it in mind for future broadcasts.
What type of advice have you received in terms of improving your observing? Like, what sort of advice have you received um, over the years up until now?
Well, uh, I haven't been doing it for years. I think it's only like a year.
Oh,
Um,
well, within the time
and
frame.
uh, and it's I think like the best advice I've gotten is like you just have to stop. You have to like stop thinking like a player. Because like if you like think like a player, your camera movement is going to be as if playing, and it's really really bad for the audience. Like if you were to just like look at how if you were to look at how I play versus how I move my camera, it's like when I play, I only I basically like move my camera super fast because I only need to like quickly look at something to kind of like understand what's going on. But you know, it's not the same for a broadcast, right? A broadcast you see all the action and all kind of stuff. So you just kind of have to pretend like you're watching it on TV and slow it down dramatically.
Uh, in due time, after working within a DPC for the past year, in addition to you working a few qualifying events for TI 10, you then received the call up to work TI 11 in Singapore. And so, what how do you view your experience to work in TI as an observer in this past edition?
My experience working TI has been pretty pretty like phenomenal. I enjoyed my time a lot, which is why it was like really really up like sad to see because like I understand it wasn't very well received.
Mhm.
There were it was obviously not a it was not a perfect event. Nothing is perfect. There's a lot that could be improved. There was a lot that everyone learned from this TI, but like as far as my experience goes, like the event itself, it was like extremely really good for me. I enjoyed everyone that I worked with. I enjoyed Singapore a lot. There was a lot of good Dota to be watched. It was just a very good experience overall.
Exactly how many matches did you work in the event? Because so far as I can see, behind looking at the list of matches that were played, I couldn't really find your name in plenty of them, as your peers did work a good number of matches. So can you talk about like exactly how many matches you played during the or you observed during the event?
Um, so I think I don't know how it works, but like basically as observers, we don't get credited uh in the games. So like the naming or the like the count is probably like incorrect, or it might not even be the people who are there because simply because we don't get credited. Um, and this isn't like a oh like this is unfair type of thing, right? This is like something that we collectively agree on. It's like better if we don't say anything about who's doing the observing because like we had to watch so many games, right? So like it's really really hard to be you know uh in your best form um like during like LCQ and during group stage, that kind of thing. um yeah, we just left all of that out. So if I had to like guess how many games I ended up watching, let me see. LCQ was in or 5 BO2s
Mm-hmm.
per day for the first, I want to say 3 days or 2 days. I can't remember. And then same with group stage again. So if I had to ballpark it, I would say maybe like 60 to 70 something games, probably.
and that's accounting for both LCQ and the entire like proper tournament, group stage,
Yes.
main
Yeah.
event combined.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. What would you say was like your favorite match to observe in TI 11?
Uh, my favorite was definitely the longest game in TI history.
Oh
It
yeah,
was yeah, it was between RNG and Entity.
so it was
That
you
was
who so it was you who observed that one.
yes, so I was watching that one.
Uh did you feel like as fatigued as the casters who just basically had to basically go all out and cover that entire match in its entirety?
Yes and no. Um because like at the end of the day, right? We observers are observers for Dota because we love Dota to begin with, right? So like as the game progresses, it's not like there's ever like this like thought in your head where you're like, oh man, I wish the game ended, like so I can leave, right? It's
Mhm.
like super invested too, right? Because you're I'm like also like really interested in like what's going to happen, like how is it going to happen. So like I was just like super I was just like super excited watching the whole time. Like I didn't know what was going to happen. I was, getting excited over every little play, and as I'm observing it, I'm also kind of like a spectator at the same time. So like I was getting nervous for teams. Like it's not even like I wasn't even nervous about missing action. Like I know I wasn't going to miss anything because
Mhm.
I wanted to see it that badly. So,
Yeah, it was definitely a privilege for any sort of player or any sort of player slash person to observe that kind of match. And fortunately, that privilege fell down to your hands. And so, it'll definitely be like a highlight for your career in this game. That'll be no doubt.
oh yeah. Yeah, it was such a crazy moment. Same with I mean, that was the thing about TI is there were so many good games. I mean, there was like I was in the production room during the Liquid series versus Thunder, I believe. That one was also
Ah,
that was also insanely exciting.
oh man, it's such fortunate that Thunder did not win that one because I was pulling for Thunder to take home that series and possibly move on in in the tournament. But oh well, what do you got to do? It's just
I mean,
it.
the yeah, I would have been like I would have been happy for like either outcome. Like I'm happy that Liquid made it, but I would have been happy if Thunder made it too. Like it was such a great year for South American Dota. So it's like really nice to see.
Yep, and such a major uh like stepping stone in that scene in that region's development because I mean we're up to the point in which major organizations are taking a look. I mean for God's sake, Evil Geniuses even decided to move from North America to South America, so it sort of like brings home the point as to how that region is going to continue to develop, and it's going to be a major progression for that region.
Oh yeah, definitely.
What then would also like begs the question for how NA is going to take care or how they're going to react with this sort of move. But that's neither here nor there, and we're not going to discuss that at this point in time. But still, back to you. Um, rewinding back to the moment in which you received that call up to work TI 11. Were you surprised to receive like the receive that call up to work in Singapore for that event?
Oh yeah. I was definitely surprised. The like once again, I'm sure you like know like how many like complaints and backlash like Valve and PGL got. revolving around this TI, but you know, whatever happened happened, and the fact that I was able to go, I'm like, all I like about it is like I was surprised, um, but I'm also like truly grateful that I got the opportunity, and I genuinely had like a very very pleasant and fantastic experience working the event over there. So uh, basically it for me from my end.
Mhm. Um, Given that there was plenty of production issues within that event, did you feel like that sort of did you experience that sort of difficulty within the observing department for the event?
I don't know. Like doing art was very very like easy and very there's like really comfortable. Like there was no issues on our end. Yeah, we just had like a good station to work at. Show up on time, observe. Yeah, we were well taken care of. So
What's going to be your biggest takeaway from working that event, and how will you take that forward for the next DPC and beyond?
ooh, my biggest takeaway, don't don't look at social media ever. Uh, Honestly, that's probably it. Like, like I mean, there's like a lot more intricacies to it, but I'm like not too sure what I can and can't talk about. Like, it's
Yeah.
the some more obvious ones is just like kind of like learning a little more about what production needs and how it functions and that kind of stuff. So, uh, for next time, if something something could be improved on the broadcast side of things. I have a better idea and could possibly provide some feedback or some ideas as to how to make things work and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm with you on that because like when I was doing when I was on my trip to Mexico, I kind of had to like force myself or kind of like decided to just step away from social media and not interact with anyone, and it does help. I'll be honest, like in the moments in which you kind of feel like most stressed, you could just like step away from that, and then you feel like this newfound sense of tranquility so fill your body and mind. So I can attest to that. I mean, and we should do that more often, stepping out of social media and just stepping outside, period.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I understand there's definitely useful feedback to think about. You have to, you have to think about what people like and what they don't like. But there was far too much like just negativity for the sake of negativity. It wasn't helping anyone. Um, it was just things that were so negative to the point where it's like it's clearly not even true, but people like genuinely started to believe in it because everyone was saying it.
Mhm.
It's like people would say things like, "Oh, what are they doing?" Like no one even cares, all that kind of stuff. And it's just like if you were there working the event, you could tell people. It's not even like you could tell, like people care, right? Like,
Mhm.
people are in this field because it's like their passion, right? People like love video games. It's like it's just that simple, right? Like if people didn't care, you wouldn't have people like literally working 16 hours in a row just to get things perfect, or as best as they could get it. It's like so it's like it was like kind of it was like really frustrating to see people, kind of like repeat that sentiment about people not caring, and it's just clearly not the case.
Mhm. Do you think that sort of drives the wedge? Do you think that sort of like um dealing with that negativity has driven a wedge between, well, within the community that sort of like contributes to the said stagnation that you mentioned previously?
I mean, it already has created a wedge between the community and the organizers, at least. Like from my point of view, it's like it got so bad to the point where it's just like there's no reason to respond, right? Like there's just no line of communication uh, at the end of the day because it's so negative. Like no matter what you say, people are just gonna spin it in a way where it's like, oh, this is just an excuse. Like you guys don't care, or this is just it's like anything you say is just gonna be taken as an excuse and then spun in a way where it's like, oh, you're trying to save money, or oh, you're trying to cut corners, that kind of thing. So it's like that wedge is already there. It's like there's not much you can do about it at this point, unless other than continuing to put out events and um try your best to make the show as as good as possible, that kind of thing.
So in that case, do you feel like that sort of dynamic is irreparable?
I don't think it's irreparable. It's just it'll take a very long time, and it will have to uh it'll have to be built up just by continuing to run events and then have it at a standard that the community is like happy with, and over a long period of time, and that's like basically all it is, because it's like what both sides want anyways, right? Like
Hmm.
as a production company, your show to be as good as possible, and then as a viewer, you want the show to be as good as possible. So as long as like standards are met, at some point people are gonna be like, okay, you guys are doing a good job. Like other than that, I don't really see why anyone would communicate with the community about production stuff.
Hmm. Um, Taking that into consideration, you in the little time in which you've become or you started becoming an observer, you've now gained uh, 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 various amounts of experience to the point in which you have appeared to in a TI. And so, what advice would you give to people who would like to pursue a career within this game being Dota? And also, what kind of advice would you give to those wanting to start a career within observing within any game in particular?
Ooh, that is a super hard one, because observing is basically like it's like a really small amount of us, and like even for myself, like I still think about this like now and then. Like I wouldn't have I shouldn't even be here technically.
Mm.
I was just lucky enough to be here. That's like how I always see it. People can, I've had friends say like, "No, you did a good job. You worked hard at it." But it's like really hard for me to see it that way. Like I genuinely believe that I just got very lucky. And on that note, like getting into esports or Dota or whatever, it's like there's just so much luck involved, and there's so much like networking that goes on. Like if you want to get into these type of things, you just have to get lucky, and you have to know the right people and that kind of stuff. It's like very, very similar to the real world occupations. The only difference is in esports, there's no like qualifications that you can show off to bump you up higher, because there's like hardly any qualifications that you need that people will like care about. You know,
Mhm,
like you can go into amateur tournaments and observe like 30 amateur tournaments, and if you were to put that on your quote unquote observing resume, like no one's really going to care. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't, like, no one's going to sit through and watch tournament VODs of your camera work and be like, yeah, this is good work. Like that's
mhm,
just not going to happen. So observing is I feel like, and this isn't even like to dissuade people from like being a competitor. It's like it's just like you just don't do it, because it's so unlikely it'll lead anywhere. and honestly, kind of similar to esports. Like if you're really passionate about esports and you want to get into it, then you got to start with like literally anything. Just like look for any esports job. It doesn't matter what it is. You just have to like get your foot in the door and try out stuff. And you basically continue doing that for a long period of time. Eventually, you'll be in the esports sphere, and that's like basically the way you go about it.
Uh, I got one more final question, and it's just talking about the future. And so, what do you think? Well, with everything considered as to how the DPC is formatted and how mm, plenty of attention has basically been gravitated towards TI and True Sight since literally the beginning, if I might say so. What do you think the state of Dota 2 as a game and as an esports and everything else that was not mentioned will look like within 5 years?
5 years. That's a tough one. I feel like if there isn't if there isn't more done to help like spread out the distribution away, like to spread like to distribute more away from TI, it's gonna be harder and harder to get people to care about about Dota. I think like TI is great and all, but the scene is more or less like dead. NA as it currently is. I think it's like perfectly fine everywhere else, but NA is just like no one even feels like there's a reason to compete. You know, people are just playing because there's just there's no one competing. So a lot of players
Mhm.
who are kind of like top level pub players are just like playing for fun and they get to get some money and whatever. But like there's no growth for new upcoming players. We probably have like less than 10 every year show up and make it to tier one Dota. It's really hard to say. 5 years, it could be completely the same and unchanged, or it could be, you know, kind of dying off even further. But seeing like a larger player base in 5 years is definitely not one of the predictions I would go with. It's like it's either it's either negative or it's even,
Well, since you
assuming
brought
nothing changes.
yeah, well, since you brought it up, then I have to ask, North America, do you feel like it's at its in its coffin finally? Has the final nail has been laid to the North American Dota coffin? Is it finally over with EG's exit? Do you feel?
I wouldn't say it's completely dead, but it's there's currently like there's currently no hope for NA fans to look towards, right? Um, but I don't think it's like the nail in the coffin because I think that eventually, uh, some team will step up to the plate and kind of like take over that spot. Actually, maybe that's not. I don't know. That's a hard one.
Mhm,
I feel like I feel like there should be a team eventually that is like willing and hungry enough to be like, this is our time to, you know, be the best NA team.
mhm,
And yeah, I mean, who knows? I heard that because I heard like TSM, you know, moved Moonmeander as head coach, so
mhm. 'Cause
it's
yeah,
not possible, not impossible for them to be the end hope, you know.
mhm. Yeah, like, 'cause they announced that yesterday, I believe, with a video about about his life, and that kind of begs the question as to whether they're going to develop new talent which it might be it's going to be a Herculean task in itself, considering what Dota is, or they're going to like assign a new batch of players, as is usually the case. So kind of like it's kind of like a wave of uncertainty behind North America, and whether it can like rise up to what it to a sliver of what it of what it was, uh, with respect to that.
I think I think they're probably gonna go with like people who are already like in the scene. Um, it's so hard to take newcomers into the scene, especially for like an org like TSM. You know, if it's like a smaller org, I would understand, but um, an org that actually has money and a support structure, they're probably gonna go with more well-known players. Because it's like it's really hard to take a chance on new upcoming players. Like OG is able to do that because that's like their identity, and I think it's like really it's a lot easier to play for a roster like that when you know like this is what they're about. But there's like no other team like that. So
Mhm,
it's really hard to say if they will take new talent. Like if they ever do take new talent, it's gonna be, 1 to 2 people at most.
mhm.
It's never gonna be a full roster of players.
Will we see Eosin TSM Eosin in the future?
I am so bad at the game now.
Hey, I mean, I'm just putting it out there. You never know. I'm just saying, you never know.
I think the closest thing I would even consider is coaching. That's like the closest.
Yeah.
I think that is still that is still like a possibility. I think I that's something like I could leave myself to be capable of. But playing Dota, there's no way I can do that anymore.
All right. Well, in any case, we'll see. We'll have to see how NA will transpire in the future. Um, Sort of almost got sidetracked there, but I got one more final question. I already asked you what you think the game is going to look like, but what do you think you will look like personally, in 5 years, or even in 10 years, if you might, if you might, if you might answer.
Every time I get asked this question, I basically always have the exact same thought, which is I don't even know what I will look like in a week. I was never the type to long term, which is pretty bad, I think. Like I was trying to think of like if there was anything good to come out of it, but there's really I don't know. I don't think about these things. I just like kind of like live my life day to day and take it all as it comes. Like I mean, I'll plan for some things, but I think like if you're especially if you work in esports, you never know what will happen. Like even in like a month or so,
Mhm,
like there's just so many things that constantly change. It's really hard to plan for the future.
mhm,
Um, and taking this opportunity I'm a big melee fan, like Smash Brothers
mm,
Melee, and using that as it's like a perfect example as to why it's really hard to plan ahead of time as someone who works in esports. They had their Smash World Tour canceled 1.5 weeks before it was gonna happen because of Nintendo and Panda Global. It's like so unfortunate, but that's esports.
yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, but as it usually has been the case with Smash, it's sort of like a phoenix rising out of the ashes. The same.
That's what we hope.
Yeah, that I believe the same will happen there. The same will happen hopefully in NA Dota as a North American fan. And also, we'll see the continuation of the man that is known as Eosin in the scene. I think that about wraps up all of my questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to doing this interview. Do you have like any final comments to share?
Uh, Not really, other than I was surprised to even be doing interviews at this day and age. This was very unexpected, but it is nice to talk about past experiences and stuff like that. So, thanks for having me. And shout outs to Beast Coast for still having me on the roster for quite a few years now. I'm still I still stream as a hobby, so you can put that out there as well.